So I had a wonderful conversation yesterday with this gorgeous member of our church. During the conversation, she admitted sometimes, and this isn't exact wording, but she said something like, sometimes I allow myself to be insulated in my space that I don't see those who are struggling outside of it. But then there are so many things to keep our attention, and I'm tired. And I'm wondering if many of us are feeling the same thing. But I'm also so inspired by people who are willing to admit such a thing, because honesty like this also prompts me to examine my own attitudes and my own heart and complacency. So it's important, not just vulnerability for our own souls, but also for each other. Jesus said, here's the truth. Some here will not taste death until they see, quote, the Son of Man, which indicates, as we've been talking about the last few weeks, the essence or the substance of humanity. They will not see death until they see this coming in the kingdom, wrapped in, enfolded in the substance of the universe is the kingdom. Jesus' resurrected body is evidence of the kingdom on earth now and to us. Because when we return to the original order, how we've been created, the unbroken unity of all creation with and in God, with new eyes, we see the gifts of abundance and diversity and interconnectedness always available to us. Our beloved community, though, is an attempt to hot glue together disparate cultures, even though most of us are fairly similar, but we come from different places. Sometimes languages and ethnic origins into one mutually committed whole. We attempt to be community together. The universe itself tells us a different story, that everything is enfolded into everything else. Right? We're made up of the stuff of stars. But we love order. We see it even where it doesn't exist and impose it through our own narratives to say, this is the way it is, or this is the way it ought to be, like this. Everything we do, it conceals, it covers up the unity that seems to be, or appears to be, intrinsic to our lives, to our life and our space. We take pictures of objects that seem to be outside of themselves, and we share our lives that way. We demarcate national boundaries. We align with friends and break with our enemies. You don't agree with me? You're no longer my Facebook friend. It's so easy. We give and receive in what seems to be neat, sequential packets of life experience. If it's easy, and if it seems like it's working well, then okay, we'll stick with it. But this is a false kind of order, because we might be unified in wars and in racial divisions, but these kinds of things inherently divide us, even when we think that we're like each other. They disrupt our unity, the wholeness of being holy image bearers of God. All of us are. And when we make divisions, we are even divided among ourselves. And it's just below the horizon of human awareness. Sometimes we're not even aware we're doing it. Diversity isn't a function of human effort or justice. It's the sea in which we swim. I love how Richard Rohr says this. It's the sea in which we swim. To enact a just order in human communities is to reclaim a sense of unity with divine and cosmological aspects of life space. The let us, I've said before, is a statement of the community of God. When God says in Genesis, let us create, God is already community, the Trinity. And perhaps in ways that we don't yet understand, the struggle for justice on many fronts is an unfolding image of the whole, the embodiment of a holistic and unfragmented community. Not an external goal, but it would be the sum of our past and our present and our future expectations and disappointments. It's all of it together. We don't separate it. Then the community called beloved becomes all that we can and cannot conceive, unimaginable, all that lies beyond the horizon of apprehension, but is available to us as part of the matrix of wholeness. We might be apprehensive about what to do, but doing something makes the possibility more real. We are the image and the likeness of God, all of us. When you look back from God's mirror, right, and recognize yourself in God, you also know that Lysander recognizes himself in God. And Kevin recognizes himself in God, and Kelly, and Gavin, and Joel, and Clark. And when we understand this is to be true for every human being on the face of the earth, who ever was and ever will be, we know that we have work to do. Because it's quite evident that we're not living a unity that recognizes the divine in people who do not look like us or people who do not think like us. Because if we were, Kenosha, Wisconsin wouldn't be in the condition it is today. If we were recognizing God in each other, we wouldn't be debating whether it's okay for people to shoot each other, no matter what the situation is. If we were living like people who know they are made up of the stuff of stars, all of us, formed from the dust of the universe, breathed into existence by the breath of the living God. If we were living our unique likeness and image of God, we wouldn't be questioning whether the other is a Christian just because he has a different perspective than you, or that she supports an organization whose tenets you don't agree with. My husband has been getting that on Facebook. He's trying to speak what he believes is right and true, and people are being hateful about it, and it makes me sad. In last Tuesday's Girl Talk, God Talk, there are some lovely moments of listening discussion. It was quite spectacular, really, because people were shifting in their perspectives. But I see precious little of this anywhere else. The place on which you are standing is holy ground. Everywhere you go, the place you are standing on is holy ground. Let your love be genuine. Outdo each other in honoring one another. Rejoice in hope. Show hospitality to strangers and recognize God in them. Live in harmony. Don't be arrogant. Be friends with the under-resourced. Can you imagine how things might change if we actually made friends with the people that we judge and look down on? And as much as it depends on you, be at peace with each other. Love those who are unkind to you, and you'll be heaping coals on their heads and all that. Overcome evil with good, not with Facebook rants, with goodness. Because far too often in our churches, we preach this theology of glory, or failing that, the theology of success. And somebody referred to this as the ABCs: attendance, buildings, and cash. And that's how we measure whether a church is successful or not. And that we're as reluctant as Peter to embrace the cross. But when we empty the cross of its power, we empty the discipleship of the cross, of following after Jesus, thereby emptying our church programs of discipleship. Jesus speaks sharply to those of us who set our minds not on heavenly things. Peter could not conceive that Jesus would need to suffer in order to make things right. He seemed to think that preaching and teaching and throwing in a miracle or two along the way would save the world just fine, thank you. He was wrong. Thank God. Peter did not realize that in order for the kingdom of God to come into being on earth, in their presence, in their hearts, Jesus would need to enter the farthest reaches of hell and return transformed, enfolded once again into the dust of the universe, the stuff of stars, in a unified wholeness of being, repaired, transformed into the original order. And now we are called to take up the cross, to intentionally, this is what it means, to intentionally, with faith in what has already been accomplished in Jesus, we believe this, do something about the madness that is happening just over the border. In our own spaces even, and in our hearts. You are the very image and likeness of God, and so is the Kenosha police chief, and so is Jacob Blake and his precious children. Taking up your cross is not a perceived burden in your life. You've heard it something like this: oh, my belligerent child is the cross that I must bear in this life. That's not what it means. Or as Howie says, the cross-eyed bear. The cross-eyed bear. The cross-eyed bear. Okay, no chuckles. He says it better. Taking up your cross and following Jesus. It's an intentional thing. It is doing the hard thing. Being intentional about your faith, what you say that you believe. Outdoing yourself in honoring another. Honoring those who might bug you. Or even talk about you behind your back. Honor them. Live in harmony. Don't judge. Make peace where there is none. Deny the things, but put aside the things that divide you. Putting aside the things that divide you. That insulate yourself from those who hurt. The things that are keeping you from seeing what is going on beyond your border, beyond your house, beyond your perspective. That prevent you from seeing the inequality and injustice in whatever form. And follow Jesus, and we will see the essence of the universe enfolding us and expanding before our very eyes as we do this together. Meister Eckhart said, wisdom consists of doing the next thing you have to do, doing it with your whole heart, and finding delight in doing it. So it might be a hard thing to do, but it is the next thing to do. Do it with your whole heart and find the delight in it. What is the next thing that Jesus might be asking of you today? What is the cross that you are to carry this week? Do it. Be intentional. Intentional faith. So after the service, this enfolding image of the whole, I made these, and this might be familiar to you, but it seemed like the most stardusty kind of thing that I had. And I folded it up like accordion, representing enfolding universe, and how we are all a part of one another, and it is one beautiful